Hello and welcome back to Tech TV. We've got another packed program here today. We're going to be covering a whole host of different topics, but to start off with, we're going to address the big headlines. And to start with, there is a massive announcement that's been happening over the weekend where the Trump administration has banned foreign access to Anthropic's AI models, Fable and its much anticipated Mythos. And they've quoted national security concerns and said that it can't be used by foreigners, which includes allies, which I think is a note of concern. Pete, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's a terrible note of concern. This has been brewing for a long time now. I mean, we've essentially been looking at the development of the geopolitical forces that underlie technology for easily the last 2 years. The Americans have been not saber rattling, they've been making it pretty clear that they're going to start to use technology in as a means of power, so of power projection, and that's what they're doing. And Europe and the UK have woken up very, very, very late to this. You had the Vice President JD Vance, what, a year and a half ago at the Munich Security Summit. He was telling us that we had to take regulations off AI so that they could basically get our data. It's very, very serious. Europe is beginning to actually start to build its own AI. Unfortunately, the UK, which is in such a parlous state at the moment, it really is very, very, very slow off the mark with regard to this bill. We've been on the Password Radio show. We've made loads of programs about this, and as you know, it's a topic that we've talked about a lot on Tech TV.
Absolutely. I mean, data sovereignty is an incredible issue, and I fought battles galore with UK Cloud to take on the big US cloud giant some time ago, and our biggest concern there was partly privacy, partly the UK cloud, the Cloud Act that was enacted in the US, which was enormously extraterritorial and intrusive. But back then, nobody really cared about all of the data sovereignty issues. But it's come to the fore partly because trust has broken down in the US and a lot of the tech giants, largely down to the behavior of the likes of Elon Musk, but also the behavior of the resident of the White House, which has shaken a lot of confidence in the States, which has made data sovereignty such a big issue at this moment in time. But my wider concern is that if AI is going to be fundamental to our futures in value creation and the economy, we actually have to have a horse in this particular race, and we appear not to. And therefore, a lot of the talk about regulating AI is largely semantic, because at this moment in time, the Americans hold all the cards, and this is of enormous concern, which is shown here. If they're going to simply, on a whim, ban the access to all foreigners from particular models, including its allies, then we should sit up and be somewhat alarmed.
Well, you look at the deal that we're actually being offered. The US Cloud Act says that any data that runs over US technology that the US can extraterritorially get access to. So they can basically take any data that they want, which is the reason why many nations in Europe have started to say that they're not going to use Microsoft any longer. They're going to use Linux. So the Americans can get all of the data. They have access to that so that they can make their AIs. But yet they don't give us the benefit of those AIs, of the benefit of that AI development. It's not actually a very, very fair deal, Bill.
Well, it's not just whether it's a fair deal. It's the fact that as we're paying for for the US cloud giants, as we're paying for the US AI models, it's like a tax on our economies. They have an effective oligopoly where there's a massive amount of value creation being drained away from the economies elsewhere, and a potential tax revenue. I mean, we need, in order to support our economies, the ability to tax value creation. And if a lot of the value creation is going to be happening in the cloud and in these AI models, and that is offshore, then we're going to be unable to tax it, and much of our tax base is going to disappear, as well as there's sort of being a wealth tax on us imposed by these US giants that are going to be charging us for usage. But more concerning than that is, if these things are going to be so core to future value creation, if they have a kill switch, if they can just switch it off at whim, then that should be of enormous concern.
Well, which they've already demonstrated. The head of the International Criminal Court, because he'd taken out an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, he'd issued an arrest warrant, the US decided to sanction him, and Microsoft cut off his access to his email. So that's already been done. That kill switch has been mentioned by US politicians. It's been mentioned by European politicians. I mean, honestly, this issue is really exploding. You've even got today, UK publishers are going to invoice AI companies over stolen content. 50 top English language news sites they've changed their terms and conditions to say that every time an AI bot hits one of their websites, they're going to charge them £500. Obviously, I don't suppose that that's going to be enforceable, but it's still a huge issue.
On top of that, there are a lot of concerns, and I believe you were talking to me previously about some headlines about the number of people concerned about their jobs being under threat. Not only our economic future, but the jobs as well.
Bill, honestly, today is a weird day. There's so much stuff that has exploded. The headlines are everywhere. It's absolute proof of the fact that technology is now utterly mainstream. It controls all of our lives, and the impact it's having is massive. And there has been very little done to actually try and curtail that at the moment. I mean, let's just look. I pulled up just some of my emails today, and it's I mean, obviously, there's all of the ones about the World Cup, which one would expect. The OECD adopts the first ever recommendations on quantum technology. That's the Organization for Economic Control and Development. They're worried about quantum. Then we have later on today, the House of Lords is going to be talking to young people about their experiences and vision for AI, which presumably is because the young people, while they will think that AI is wonderful, they will also be a little worried, because there's a massive survey that the unions have done which says that half of their workers are worried that artificial intelligence will take their jobs. Now, that's a theme that is just, I've got 3 more emails that are saying the same thing. Let's look at another factor, another issue, that just going to that use of data by AI, the average monetary penalty that has been issued by the Information Commissioner's Office has jumped from 675,000 in 2023 to almost 3.2 million so far. I mean, technology is really, really, really absolutely center stage now. And then look at this one. I mean, this one is absolutely wonderful. We're just following up from what we were saying about the publishers. The enterprises are going to face an influx of AI lawsuits by 2027. That's next year. And that's comes from a top AI executive, which, if you think about it, that's not going to be a real surprise, because you're going to have all of these AI systems that are out there doing things, and you won't really know what they're doing. And so when they do break the law, you will suddenly find, a little like your AI bill has been climbing without you even knowing it, you'll find that you've got lawyers knocking on your door, maybe even AI lawyers. You never know. And then here's another one, which is probably a great way to go into the next thing that we're going to talk about. Children's rights and safety are at the heart of the Council of Europe's priorities in June. So in Strasbourg, what they're going to be talking about, social media and children's mental health, the use of AI tools to create content depicting sexual abuse, and 15 years of action to protect children from sexual exploitation and abuse. Now, it's very, very lucky that we've actually got a leading expert to talk to us about this. We've got Tony Neate from GetSafeOnline, who, and I have to admit that young as I look, I've known Tony for a considerable amount of time, going back to his time at the National High Tech Crime Unit. So, Tony, we're here to talk about another momentous thing that's been suggested today. Sir Keir Starmer has said that there is going to be a ban on social media use for children under 16. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it's great to be with you, Bill and Pete. I've been waiting probably a number of years to be invited onto your channel. I'm really pleased to be here. And on a momentous day, let's be honest. I suppose I've got three hats when we talk about children's safety online. The first one is I'm the CEO of GetSafeOnline. We've been going for over 20 years. I'm a grandfather of 6 children from ages from 1 all the way up to 13. But I'm also a former police officer, an ex-police officer. So when I look at it with those 3 hats on. And there's no choice about it. The internet, when it comes to children, is broken. And we need to do something about safeguarding those children. I've been watching the news intently this morning, listening to all the things that are going on where children are vulnerable from this. And let's be honest, it's not just vulnerable children. All children are vulnerable, as are an awful lot of adults. And I think this is a step that needs to be taken. Whether it's going to work is something we're going to see in the long term. From what I've read about what's happening in Australia, it's not working. And the other thing when it comes to children are people at the end of the day. There are good ones and there are bad ones. There are children that will never ever be dishonest, and children who like to push the boundaries. And I think the children who like to be honest and who are looked after very carefully by their parents will never go down this road. But you'll have other children who will take a risk and will look at how to get past it and be able to do it, whether it's taking over their parents' account, whether it's using a VPN, numerous different ways. So you might say, Tone, you're sitting on the fence. Yeah, I might be sitting on the fence, and you sometimes get splinters, but I'd like to see what happens later on this year or when the actual act becomes enforced.
But isn't that the key, though, Tony? Everybody knows that you can't really stop people. I mean, children weren't meant to smoke. I can remember when I was obviously a teenager, not very long ago, I can remember people smoking behind the bike shed, etc., etc. So you are going to do it, but it's almost, is it important that people, you know this better than anybody as a police officer, if you know that you're doing something wrong, is that useful psychologically?
I think it does with adults. I don't know whether they think about it in relation to children. I look at the riots that have been taking place over the last week, where yobs have been throwing stones and Molotov cocktails at the police, and an awful lot of them are not wearing masks. How stupid can you be? The police will probably find them with the masks of what their clothing is wearing, but children don't think about the implications of what they're doing. And what we've got to do is protect them. The other thing I think is the government are indicating that it is all down to the technology companies. I fundamentally don't agree with that. I think security and safety online is to do with all of us. We're all responsible. That's the tech companies, the government, the police, parents, and also the children involved. We've all got a step to play to make sure. Just saying this is totally the technology people's fault. No, children need protection from their parents, and parents need to protect their children. When I had three girls, and we knew where they were most of the time. We didn't allow them to go off after school to parks to do smoking or drinking, and a number of parents will allow that. And whether that's just more freedom or whether that's not caring, I don't know. But that's what we've got to be careful about.
My question about the proposed ban in the UK on social media use by under-16s is all about enforcement. And there seem to be a lot of lessons that have been learnt from Australia, where they've been doing this for a while now. And the government have proclaimed that the system in the UK is going to be Australia plus plus, without explaining what either of the pluses refer to. My concern is that we have the ability to put in place some controls, and it's going to be an enormously laborious way of doing it, and as there are going to be innovative kids who will get around it. Why aren't we doing something at the source? For some time now, we have complained that the likes of Twitter and other platforms, who have the means to use AI and other means to sort of moderate the content on their platforms, they know if something is going to be abusive content. They can stop online cyberbullying if they put their mind to it. And indeed, they used to have a great deal more moderation, but much of the moderation was cut back with the current administration in the US turning a blind eye. So my concern is that just as we've, in our first story here, talked about some of the issues that we have with all of the big cloud and AI firms being based out of the US, there are similar concerns with the social media platforms being based out of the US and therefore regulated in a way that isn't in our interests. Should we be doing more to kick off about that? And how can we resolve the problem?
Absolutely. And I think one thing we've got to realize is when these big tech companies, they're not just companies, they are multi-billion companies with billions of dollars available to them to do something about it. I remember a number of years ago when Facebook said that they were going to increase the number of people looking at security by the hundreds. Well, that just wasn't enough. You know, when you look how big Facebook was, it should have been increasing by the thousands. And the technology is supposed to be there. These people have got a brilliant at what they do. But of course, their main intention is to sell products on their media strategy platforms. And that's what they want to do. And they look at everything else in as a secondary. I think the government has been, in a way, trying to persuade them to change their methods. They've been using a carrot. But I think this legislation, when it comes out, that'll be using a stick. And let's be honest, these companies need a stick. They need a stick to be told what they've got to do, because we've got to safeguard our children. You know, I've got family friends where their children have really been affected by social media. I've got one friend whose daughter is in a hospital right now because she's lost so much weight because of the influences on social media. So it's probably someone who's got a relationship with a family that's got a problem when it comes to their children and how they've been affected by social media. So yes, you're absolutely right, Bill. We've got to push this. Government are pushing it, and we've got to do something harder. But how we're going to prove that these people are underage and how we're going to do it, especially when parents possibly don't care and will allow them to do whatever they want to do, it's a big, big ask. And I'm really interested to know how they're going to go about it.
But Tony, don't you think, I mean, that hits one of the nubs of this sovereignty issue, which is it's one of jurisdiction, because basically we are in a situation where you've got a technology product coming in from a country that isn't yours, and you're not able to actually say to the people who are providing that technology product, we don't want this here going to people who are under a certain age. I mean, this is where you say, let's get tough. Well, we do have to get tough about that, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. And I remember going back a number of years ago when crime was starting to be international crime and would affect this country from anywhere in the world. And what I saw when I was you mentioned I was in the National High-Tech Crime Unit dealing with international crime. And what would happen? Criminals could get on a plane and fly to a country and set up and start straight away. It would potentially take months and months for the police to liaise with the police in another country in order to stop it, because it's not how government and how law enforcement is set up. But now we've got the situation where you can literally sit anywhere and pretend you're sitting somewhere else. You can say anything with fake news. With AI, you can actually prove that and what's going on. It was great a couple of years ago. I could say, oh, you can spot AI because their eyes might be moving and their lips, but nothing else will be. And if you look closely, that doesn't apply anymore. AI is so good now. I've been doing this for nearly 30 years. I can't tell the difference now with some of these really good AIs. And that's the problem we've got at the moment. How do you stop it internationally when there are boundaries, when one government will talk to another government won't talk to another, law enforcement can't do their job because they're stopped by the political hierarchy? It is an absolute maze. It really is.
Okay, well, I mean, you say we need the parents need to actually take their share of responsibility. You're chief executive of GetSafeOnline. Do we need a massive awareness raising campaign? I mean, I can remember some of the campaigns that we used to have again when I was young. Watch out, there's a thief about. Do we need something like that where we're actually saying to people, look, these are the risks, these are the harms that you've just mentioned of people who are seeing their children getting unduly influenced?
We do, but we need media and the big media to get involved in it as well. I always remember talking to Microsoft when they came over with Bill Gates, and I spoke to his press secretary. We're talking a lot of years ago when GetSafeOnline first started. And I said, oh, you must be quite enjoyable to come across to Britain with no language barriers. He said, it's the worst place. He said, your news, all they're interested in is negative stuff. They're never, ever interested in positive. And when we put positive messages out about how to be safe and secure, they're not interested. They want to hear the horror stories, but they don't want to hear the good news stories. And that's one of the problems we've got. But you're absolutely right. Education and awareness is most important in relation to it. And if you can get in early and educate the children, and we found when we talk to schools and universities, schools are very good. Junior schools and senior schools are really good, and they listen and they take on board. As soon as they start in university, they think they're untouchable. They think they know it all, and security, with an awful lot of them, go out the window. And that's what we've got to be concerned. We need to keep that flowing all the way through, from children when they first pick up an iPad all the way through to Silver Surfers. And let me tell you, Silver Surfers can be far more secure because they're less trustworthy of the internet, which is a good thing. But of course, it's the senior service, the senior citizens who have more money. And that's what we see. And that's why they go after senior citizens. But, we could talk about this all week. We could have conversations about everything. And I think the majority of people will probably agree, other than maybe the chief executives of the technology companies. But how we implement it, you're dead right, Pete, how we implement it is really, really important and something we've got to take a grasp of.
Tony Neate, thank you very, very much. A pleasure as always. Maybe we'll do it again.
Great to do it again. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, before you go, there's one final story that we wanted to focus on, just to leave on a slightly more light-hearted note. We don't want to be all doom and gloom here. One of the stories that we also saw in the media in the last short while has been all about soft robots, and some of them being fitted with tiny soft pumps to move their bodies. Fans of The Wizard of Oz and the Yellow Brick Road will remember that the Tin Man didn't have a heart. Well, maybe some of the robots of the future are actually going to have one. Pete, what are your thoughts, in fact, of the fact that we're getting closer and closer to some of these things being very hyper-real?
I think it's very sweet. I mean, in fact, actually, if you're talking about awareness raising, perhaps this is one of the ways that you could do that. I mean, it means that children's toys at Christmas are probably going to be ever more innovative, where you're actually going to see little butterflies flying around your room, and presumably you'll have children talking to them. Yeah, that might not be a good thing.
Well, one of my thoughts was that this is incredibly timely because there actually happens to be a new episode of Toy Story where it's all about the narrative in the film is all about a battle between the toys that are online and AI enabled and have screens and whatever, and the old-fashioned toys that aren't. And maybe in our real world, we need to consider more time away from the screen. We don't necessarily have to wait until things are banned before we go out and do something more constructive. But I'm wishing you guys a very joyful, constructive week. It's very sunny outside at the moment. Maybe we can draw a line there and get away from our screens and go and enjoy the outdoors a little bit more. Thank you both very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure.